Hello, Ivy here. This month's podcast is entitled Post-Separation Coercive Control by Family and Groups. An introduction. This month's podcast continues to explore the tactics used by the UK monarchy family and associate groups to continue focusing on the activities of non-taxpayer-funded royal family members who were forced out of the UK to protect their mental health and to reduce the risk to life. Whilst at the same time, the tax-funded monarchy family continue to place more resources and time on vanity projects which constantly aim to destroy the reputation of the people who dared to leave, or to play dress-up and live under the false belief that they are anointed and the monarchy will be there forever. The situation is now such that the monarchy is, in its current state, is there to spend money on making them look good to the world at large. And if it involves an extraordinary amount of expenditure to dress up in costumes and to parade around in the weight of stolen jewels, to display the power in play here, in full sight, then so be it. A very small percentage of time is spent on what is classed as royal duties, which enable them to tick a few boxes each year, and a sycophantic press that use brainwashing techniques to those who think they can live their fantasy lives through people who are born into hereditary positions of power, without any concern for expecting any type of knowledge of the subjects or any competence in any field of any of the vanity projects that they choose to dip in and out of at whim. Increasingly, the UK monarchy seems totally antiquated and irrelevant to how the majority of society live life. The UK monarchy is founded on protocol and total acceptance of the rules, with no space for questioning anything. Everyone born into the regime is prevented from ever leaving it, and none of the ones who have tried to do so over the centuries have generally not fared well. Modern approach to royalty is to prevent any member of the family ever experiencing any life outside of the monarchy bubble. Royal family members only mixed with aristocracy, and that same societal group formed the traditional gene pool route to find a future marital partner. These couplings were not based on affection or friendship. Those possibly came along later, but it was not a requirement. And duty became the required approach to such things. After all, these unions were more businesslike than affection for each other. Senior royals over centuries had various relationships outside marriage, and the spouse was there purely to produce children. Nothing deviated from all that in this current royal family. The rhetoric in tabloid press in the UK uses words that imply affection, and some spend public funds on producing videos and movie-like productions to tell the world how much affection exists between various couples. So believable, in fact, that you would need very strong magnifying glasses to see the apparent interest in this family, let alone believe that love exists. The monarch's aim is to protect the entity of monarchy at all cost, whatever it takes. All those who can never leave, not least because they have no life skills outside of the British royal family and would instantly return for survival. The monarch knows that, and has always known that over decades, if not centuries. The monarch keeps members of the royal family obedient by controlling what finances are allocated to whom, and by ensuring that most of them have very limited knowledge of how the world works outside of palace gates. It means that when they venture outside, they are like fish out of water, and all the actions required of them are robotic and without emotion. We deserve better than this genealogy procreation scheme for modern-day slaves. No one has really dared to leave. A few have tried, a little bit of a meander, and those that did were not successful. Public funds are directed at all British royal family members, persuading anyone who has doubts about remaining or leaving, to persuade others to discourage the doubters from ever leaving the threshold. Or in my description, from ever leaving the plantation behind gilded gates. The monarch calls upon its tabloid press partners to do everything in their power to disgrace the person or people from considering life that might be better outside of that plantation behind gilded gates. It always follows that people around the globe are fed disinformation about anyone who contemplating on leaving. Everyone within the plantation relies on income from the monarch to exist. Hence why so many freeloaders are on taxpayers' dimes, no matter what the official line is. Those people who have no other source of income, which is most of them, cannot leave, so have to bow down to the senior royals and join in the pylon of negativity and lies of the chosen targets, to frighten people to give up the notion of ever thinking that it would be allowed for any member of the royal family, particularly a senior royal, to be allowed to leave, and for that royal to be left in peace. Not a chance. And if the establishment cannot persuade the royal to change their mind, then they will work on others to make it impossible for anyone to leave. If someone leaves by reason of divorce, the same tactics are used, but described as everything but the truth. The bottom line is, no one can be allowed to succeed outside of the royal plantation. What happens when a senior royal in the UK does actually escape? The campaign to force the return or the destruction of that individual or individuals is the bottom line. It is wrapped up in fancy rhetoric, but the bottom line is no one must be seen to succeed outside of the confines of the plantation. The forced attempts at controlling someone as to how they should live their life and where has gone on for centuries. But in this current British royal family, they are spending so much time and energy on trying to destroy their own family member, and particularly his wife. The ongoing 8-year campaign of seek and destroy is in full swing. And there is not one human rights activist organisation who has had the backbone to stand up and say enough. There are a number of injustices around the world, and I don't know of many human rights groups who are known to bringing that many, if any, conflicts to an end. Therefore, it is no surprise that when it comes to a monarchy family, all those human rights specialists turn the other way, officially saying by their silence, nothing to see here. The tide is changing, and someday all those who hid behind activist titles and bowing and scraping to people of pure evil and trying to be cordial is going to come back and haunt you in the future. What has been going on for the last 8 years in the UK is just one small example of how everyone is truly not equal under the law. If this was the case, so many people would not be left to continue abusive and cruel acts in broad daylight and know that they will be free to continue with that behaviour, unlike their less powerful counterparts. As for the victims in these acts of control and abusive behaviour, they are at the lowest rung of the ladder of human rights and of being allocated justice. This channel has continued to research and to write to activists along with researchers in their various specialist fields and people of influence who dip their toes into charity work if it makes their profile look good and makes them feel like they have accomplished something. Others just mix with certain individuals in the search for power and influence, and before they know it, they suddenly realise they are implicated in things that they did not think would come to light, or they fleetingly were in close proximity to nefarious human rights abuse, and years down the line, others trying to protect themselves and their families from the obliteration of their empires built up over many years, will then seek to drag in others in order to save their own hide. This podcast will look at types of abusive behaviour which many think does not apply to certain people and groups, and in the case of the UK, have an establishment all part of the top societal group, all protecting each other, to make sure that the few truly bad apples, that's probably their official description being few, to make sure that the few truly bad apples do not cause all the trees and shrubs to rot and fall down. This 8-year and counting campaign of abuse in the UK of a senior royal and his wife who dared to walk away from abuse under the radar of the regime controlling the plantation behind gilded gates, set about creating a series of traps which was meant to make the senior royal return to the fold, and for his wife and children to be left to perish in some shape or form. Most of the abusers in this chain of activity have aimed their anger at the multi-millionaire biracial woman who entered the all-white royal family in the UK and very quickly came to realise that the family did not want her to remain. She was treated like a slave, treated like someone whose life had no value, pursued for 8 years relentlessly like an animal being chased and hunted down, dehumanised from day one. The worst crime that could be held against her was that she was way too intelligent for the brain-dead people walking the halls of palaces. She shone too bright for the dusty relics parading around in stolen diamonds. She was too accomplished for people who had never earned a wage or wore a medal out of true valour. In service, nothing was authentically in place due to skill and competence and knowledge. Everything awarded to this family is there because of the birth canal from which they emerged and the order they entered the master's home on the plantation. It was beyond intolerable for that group to be able to function or hold conversations about a wide range of topics. All one had to do was to be surrounded by people who pretended to like them, and who made each royal family member feel adored, and who people curtsied and bowed to. The multimillionaire female who entered those hallowed spaces took one look around and realised she lived better than that on her own, and earned her millions by hard work and perseverance. No one gave her anything on a plate. She had to be better than most to even get a chance of some of her successes. A highly accomplished project manager and an expert at raising funds for charitable causes. True and genuine charitable causes. The earth spun on its axis when the senior royal, who dreamt of being away from royalty and who wanted to see more of the world than he was able to do in his life to date, met the accomplished and highly educated lady of colour. Both of them knew that they had met their soulmate. The stars were aligned. All the hate that started from that meeting has continued through engagement, marriage, and 2 children, and the loss of a baby. Yes, hate-filled articles were written in the UK tabloids about the loss of their baby. That is how low the establishment and pals have sunk. This podcast will show how the past 8 years has more than provided evidence to take action. It would not matter if every hater out there joined convents and monasteries tomorrow. They have all done more than enough to be questioned about abusive and dangerous activity towards one family. And I am certain many more are going to be surprised how they are guilty under various laws, and they will be in a mental tailspin as each one is plucked out of the gang and informed of a few home truths in legal documentation. Yes, all those who have made Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, the target for your Hate for Hire campaign, have provided records over the last 8 years that matches several areas of illegal activity. The evidence is there. You should have all left Harry and Meghan alone and carried on with the fantasy of the UK monarchy, as is your right. But when an evidence-based campaign can be proven in multiple areas of the law, it is arrogance and denial that lets you believe that you can continue as you have done for years. I am not going to write most of the evidence base here or discuss it in a podcast. In due course, those that need to do the job they are employed to do will need to grow a spine. And if not, there are plenty of young, qualified human rights experts who are eager to make a name for themselves, alongside helping create new case law of the future. I will just give you a flavour of what is coming down the line, and how many of you are going to pay for the actions you have been involved in. Let's take a look at an outline of 3 groups of people and their activity, and how 8 years of data provides much more than evidence. It provides trend data, which can then trigger a host of follow-up legal action. As one old saying goes, you should have sat there and ate your food, but no, you chose to jump on the gravy train of hate, and many of you are going to wish you had left the gravy. And look where you are likely to end up, alongside being in financial insecurity. Let me outline how each of the three groups can be involved in stochastic terrorism and the disconnect between their claimed intentions and their actual behaviour. I will also touch on the legal aspects of obtaining an injunction and whether such measures have been taken in similar scenarios. We see more and more mentions of stochastic terrorism, and I am sure that most of the people guilty of this behaviour have absolutely no idea how much and how each of the deeds that they have been involved in are forever attached to their activity trail. Let's have a look at our first group, tabloid media, both printed and televised. Let's have a look at what the tabloid media claim is their activity and what they claim they are doing. Tabloid media and their counterparts on television often claim they are reporting news, exercising free speech, or holding public figures accountable. They may present themselves as simply informing the public or providing entertainment. Some tabloid gossip writers have set up TV programmes and talk to other gossip writers, and try to appear all sincere and knowledgeable and skilled professionals having serious discussions. The fact that resources are allocated to gossip columnists to talk about the articles they have written in the previous week and call it informative or entertaining is beyond parody. The gravy train will come to an end sooner than they have even considered possible. The next section, and by the way, all of these sections will be applied to the three groups that I'm covering for the podcast. There are other groups, but these are the three that I think people will identify with immediately. So this next section is, as opposed to claimed activity, this is actual behaviour. Sensationalism. They publish sensational, often misleading or exaggerated stories to attract readership. Intrusive reporting. They invade the privacy of individuals, often publishing personal information or intimate details without consent. Amplification of hate. By consistently publishing negative stories about a person, they can amplify hate and resentment towards that individual. Let's have a look at a few examples of stochastic terrorism in respect of tabloid media. Publishing inflammatory headlines that incite anger or violence. Repeating unfounded allegations that contribute to public hostility towards the individual. Using emotionally charged language that dehumanises the target. And by the way, under each of these headings, in this case the three groups, and within each of those groups it's divided up into three sections. Just remember that There are more bullet points, far more that could be added under each of these headings, but I'm not about to do the work that's going to help the haters on the other end. Let them find out how they wish to find out if they want to go and look and do some research, or if they're confident that what they're doing is fine, leave them to it. So this is a very simplistic top level in terms of helicopter view of what they claim, what they really do, and so on, because I'm not out to write their textbook for them. So our next section looks at an aristocratic family. And I think you know who the main family is in this, but for now, aristocratic family will suffice. Well, let's have a look at the claimed activity, what they claim they are doing. In this case, with one particular aristocratic family, they claim via the tabloids. But we know where the original instruction came from. An aristocratic family might argue that they are preserving tradition and family honour. They might claim their actions are meant to correct or discipline a wayward family member. Actual behaviour by this group, this family or families: social ostracism, using their social influence to alienate the target from communal or familial groups. Financial harassment, which we've touched on earlier in this podcast, employing economic means to pressure or undermine the individual's stability. Coordinated smearing, using their connections to spread rumours and negative portrayals of the target. Examples of stochastic terrorism when it comes to an aristocratic family or families: coordinating with the media to leak damaging stories, using influential friends to publicly denounce the target, implicitly encouraging harmful behaviour through coded language or subtle cues. I hesitated at one of those bullet points purely because, just thinking about it as I'm going through my notes, every one of those bullet points, immediately several examples came to mind of what has been done by the Monarchy and pals. So the fact that I'm listing 2 or 3, as you know, is a drop in the ocean. But it made me think, and I thought, no, I'd be here all day if I was going to list even a few examples under each heading. But they're there, and there is plenty of evidence, as I said, over 8 years. They're about to be for such a big surprise one day. Our third and final group in this podcast, there are others, but they're the main 3, and then there are, if you like, spider webs of activity that emanate from these 3. These are the keyboard warriors. Let's have a look at their claimed activity, what they claim they are doing. Keyboard warriors often assert they are expressing their opinions, engaging in debate, or exercising free speech online. They may present themselves as part of a larger advocacy or justice movement. Their actual behaviour: some examples: trolling, repeatedly sending harassing or threatening messages to the target; doxing, publishing private information about the individual online to encourage harassment. And I'll just say here, There is a current example of that running through social media platforms right now. And that individual who began that particular trail will also live to regret it. Social media mobs organising coordinated attacks to overwhelm and intimidate the target. And I'd just like to add to those three, as I said, there are plenty of other headings I could have put, but every social media platform owner and the staff that they employ, but particularly the owners of these platforms, I believe should be held to account too, because they are also benefiting from the money that comes in. In fact, they get 60% of the earnings of the keyboard warriors. I think there should be financial penalties and a lot more to go with it. So, but that's another story, and quite honest, I'm sure that that'll be the case, because until it affects their bottom line in terms of finance, they're not really going to be invested in clearing up the platform. And in the case of one particular platform, it has become a cesspool very quickly already. And the data and the evidence that's been pulled together with that is just proving the 8 years this has gone on before. Yeah, I think you know which platform that is. It's just beyond a clown show now. Examples of stochastic terrorism in respect of the keyboard warriors. 3 examples here. Directly threatening violence or harm through online platforms. Spreading false information to incite others to act violently. Encourage mass reporting of the target social media accounts to silence or deplatform them. And let me say on these 3 bullet points, in terms of keyboard warriors activity, those 3 are in full swing. Full swing. There are so many accounts that have been targeted and cancelled, or at least that have stopped from taking part in any kind of posting of anything for the time being. And there are others out there that are left alone, and the others out there that are left alone, there is a particular number of traits that apply to all of those, and it's plain to see why they were left alone and why other accounts using this doxing approach as just one, why others have been targeted and closed down. But in my mind, for my research, and I'm not the only researcher in this, believe me, and I'm compared to all of those and the amateur in that, but my research suggests that all that's going on now in terms of this stochastic terrorism activity is they are rubber stamping and reinforcing the 8 years of data already gathered, or will be already gathered quite soon. Some are already doing it, but there are some places that we want to pull on board too. So let's just wait and see what happens. I am confident. I may be in a minority, but I have no problem with that. I'm certain there will be movement on a number of fronts around this area of activity. This next section looks at just an overview of the legal aspects, injunctions and precedents. An injunction is a legal order that requires a party to do or refrain from doing specific acts. Here's how it could be applied, and hopefully this and other approaches, how they will be applied to the groups that we've just been discussing. So when we come to have a look at what could be done against media, while it is difficult, it is possible to obtain an injunction against media outlets to prevent the publication of certain information, particularly if it can be proven that publication constitutes harassment or incitement. I think that's all we need to say on that one. There's a lot more, but that sentence alone is quite heavyweight, and people will come to realise that, or certain people will come to realise that soon, and groups. Against family members. An injunction can be placed against individuals, including family members, if their actions amount to harassment, stalking, or threats. And this one-liner, in respect of the online harassers, social media platforms have policies against harassment. Gosh, who would have thought? And courts can issue injunctions against individuals who perpetrate online abuse. And let me just say here, there is case law, not widely, but certainly in more than one country, where this has actually happened. That'll be a surprise to many, I'm sure, but they're going to discover a lot more surprises soon. Examples of similar cases. In extreme cases, orders such as non-molestation orders or harassment protection orders have been issued to prevent continued harassment. Celebrities have sometimes managed to obtain injunctions against paparazzi and intrusive reporting. Practical applications and challenges. Challenges in enforcing injunctions. Evidence. Substantial evidence must be provided to establish patterns of behaviour. Scope. Injunctions need to be specific in what they prohibit, making blanket bans difficult to enforce. Jurisdiction. Injunctions can be hard to enforce internationally, particularly with online harassment. What I will say on those three headings: one, where it talks about substantial evidence being required. I believe we have that already, 8 years of it. The scope, in terms of what an injunction can cover and what it won't be able to do so. Research is going on in that area and has been for some time, and I just believe it's a matter of time when the legal aspects of it are finally drawn up. I do believe that that's on its way. Jurisdiction. Injunctions can be hard to enforce, they say, internationally. The very fact that there are groups of people in both academia and in subject matter experts in various parts of the law are already in discussions, whether they're informal or not, it doesn't matter. They are talking and discussing the possibility of how an international approach needs to be explored and delivered at some point, not least because people can the abuser can be based in one country and abuse someone living on a different continent. Technology has moved on. The law, therefore, needs to move along at the same pace. And I believe that that's already under discussion, and I believe that will come one day. Potential for change. Legislation, new laws or amendments to existing laws may be required to address the unique nature of stochastic terrorism. Precedents. Successful cases can set precedents that make future injunctions easier to obtain. Public awareness. Increased public awareness and acknowledgement of these issues can lead to greater support for legislative change. And as I've just said, I believe that process is underway. And the wider public awareness that takes place will help bolster that movement. I am confident of that. Like I said, I don't know. I'm assuming I'm in a small group that believes that. But I am 100% certain there's going to be action on this area, and a lot of people are going to be in for a very, very rude awakening. And to bring this podcast to an end, a conclusion. Each of these groups can be implicated in stochastic terrorism through various behaviours that diverge from their stated intentions. Legal measures are possible, but challenging, and often require substantial evidence to support claims of harassment or incitement. There is potential for legal precedents to be set in this area, which could provide stronger protections in the future. My belief is that over the course of the last 8 years, all those groups mentioned in this podcast, and those who hide behind them with wads of money to wave in front of them, to do the things that they do, the evidence trail and trend data, among many other key pieces of information, is there and can be used now to start legal action and to build on that approach with amended or new laws to include in the Human Rights Act and its various articles. The evidence base is international. It is about bringing all these strands together and introduce laws that add to the existing coercive control legislation. No adult or child should suffer or lose their life because of activities carried out online to targets based across continents and where their abusers sit behind desks on another continent, feeling safe by their location and their privilege. All those who have been involved in research or know of individuals having to flee from their abusers, sometimes across continents, and who still suffer at their hands, can come together and very quickly compile databases comprising of trend data and patterns of behaviour, etc. The evidence is already out there, and no erasing that takes place from today will be able to change that. There might be many rivers of change to cross, but I tell you, I feel it in my bones. A change is going to come. That's the end of our podcast for this month. As usual, the article will follow on the Monday after the podcast airs. Hopefully, you've been given, I hope, food for thought. Like I said, this was not about putting chapter and verse in this. I would never be given that information like that to help any of those that deserve legal action taken against them. This is just giving an overview, just to open up some thought processes about what we all can do and contribute internationally to a centralised international database. So, it's goodbye from me. Goodbye from Ivy. Bye.
There's a message drifting in the air. of hope.